And I always liken AI to, giving a 10-year-old a loaded gun, because it can be a very dangerous tool, right? So what I think it's going to do is it's going to expose a lot of lazy recruiters who are just going to go to some generative AI like a ChatGPT, generate outreach messages, generate emails, do whatever they're going to do, and then not go and edit it, add in their personalization, make it sound like a human being, because no one speaks like ChatGPT, right? My name is Vanessa Roth. I'm currently based in Johannesburg in South Africa, soon to be based on the coast in South Africa as we're moving at the end of the year. And I'm a global talent sourcing trainer, which means that I wake up at odd hours and I work late at night, training teams all over the world on how to find talent more effectively and more efficiently than their competitors. I love what I do. Also do a lot of keynote speaking at conferences, travel around the world. So yeah, I'm not complaining at the moment. So interesting. So yes, it's been very unconventional, should I say. I actually tell the story whenever I'm training new teams or I'm presenting at a conference, because I just want to show people that life isn't always linear. It doesn't always follow the correct path, and anyone can be, as you said, a powerhouse in the recruitment industry. I was very lucky and very fortunate that all of the roles that I've worked in have been very people orientated. So I think my understanding of people and how to interact with individuals from all over the world, different places, different walks of life has helped me. So you're right. I started out as a school teacher. That's my training. That's my degree. I did that for 7 years in London. It was amazing. I really enjoyed it. And then decided in my early 30s now I've had enough of all the seriousness, and I went to go and live in Thailand for a year. And it was great. I trained as a scuba diving instructor. I spent lots of time under the sea. When I wasn't under the sea, I was working behind a bar on the beach. And again, meeting people from all over the world. It was amazing. I then ended up taking my diving career to East Africa to get closer to home in South Africa. Loved that too. Got bent a few too many times under the sea, so I ended up on land doing a couple of hospitality roles in and around Kenya and Tanzania. And then I just woke up one morning and decided it was time to come home. And I didn't really want to go back to teaching. Johannesburg's not near the sea, so I couldn't do the scuba thing. So I decided that let me go for an interview at a recruitment agency and see what they can offer me. And they actually turned around and they said, well, become a recruiter, join the team. And I was like, wow, okay, that's amazing. But I don't know anything about recruitment. And it was a very steep learning curve. I learned very quickly. I spent 2 years in a recruitment agency, loved it, very fast paced, a little bit like a boiler room kind of setup, and then spent the next 10 years working as an internal head of talent acquisition for a very successful IT company here in South Africa. Then they decided that they were going to sell to a corporate, and I was like, this isn't for me, I'm out of here. And that was 5 years ago. So I've been a solopreneur for 5 years. I absolutely love it. And I love the opportunities that I've been afforded by going on my own and being able to pick and choose clients and just, determine the direction of my business. Actually all weaves into exactly where I am now. And that's about being really people focused. One of the difficult things is being a scuba diving instructor is you get a whole lot of people, they could be new to diving. They're at 20 meters to 30 meters under the sea, and you've got to kind of predict, is anyone going to see a shark and bolt to the surface? Is anyone going to kick some coral, or what are they going to do? And you can't communicate with them. You can only look at their eyes. So you've got to get a really good judge of people before you get them in the water, and then really watch what they get up to when they are, under the sea. So I think definitely, and that's a great question, because, meeting people from all walks of life, understanding what makes people tick, understanding that we're all different, has really led me to being able to really interact well with people. And as mentioned, I train people all over the world. And for example, you get onto a phone call in the UK to a new client and you've got to talk about the weather because that's important to them. So it's about understanding different nationalities and what makes people tick. And it definitely provides me with a lot of success in what I do right now. So for the first 4 years of running my business, I obviously started just before COVID, which was a little bit of a shock. When COVID hit, I sat up and I said, I've left this amazing corporate job, guaranteed salary, and now, what's going to happen to my business? My business was about 6 months old when COVID hit. So I launched the business because, as mentioned, I didn't want to stay and work for a corporate. I've always wanted to work for myself. I wanted to get back to the training side of what I'd learned being a teacher. So there were lots of different reasons for, what I actually, for setting out to train people. I like to empower people. I like to see those light bulb moments go on. So for the first 4 years, and largely part to COVID, which was a huge success for my business, was that I delivered live training because people realized it didn't matter where your trainer was sitting in the world. You could be based in the US and I could be in South Africa. And as long as I was prepared to stay up late at night, I could train your teams how to be better sources of talent, which was great. But it was exhausting because some days I was, training for 8 hours at a time, 10 hours at a time. And, every bit of training is like an Oscar performance, lots of energy. And, so it got to last year, and during the course of last year, I thought this is actually not sustainable. I've got other things that I want to achieve with my life. I want to, maybe start my own podcast, write a book, and I can't do that if I'm always delivering training. So that's why, beginning of this year, I actually set aside 2 months. I worked with an amazing content creator. I recorded all of my training content. So 3 days of training became 6 courses online, and did all the recordings, got it into an online academy, and there it is. So it's much more accessible to people now, because, listening to me talk for 4 hours when you've got a busy desk to run was hard. Now I find a lot of people listen to my training and watch the videos over weekends or evenings, or when they've got a quick gap in the day. So it's much more accessible. It's much quicker. People aren't waiting for me. I had a 5-month waiting list for my training, which was just ridiculous. So it's been a win-win, and it's been far more successful than I ever thought it would be. I've currently got about 150 people in my online academy, which is great. I'm happy with that. So success stories is I can actually just go back to the fact that I've got 140 people going through my academy, because I didn't know how many people I would have. I still deliver in-person training, but it seems that the academy is so successful that it's taking over from the demand for in-person training. The biggest success stories is that I've actually had one company send 80 people through that they finished last month, and that was just amazing. So it was great to have volume. One of the success stories is that when I first launched the academy, especially people who'd done my training before, were very concerned about losing that personal interaction with me. And a person can only be stretched so far. So what I actually do is I sell the training, and then I also sell 1-hour Q&A sessions. And in those Q&A sessions, people can book time with me. I can answer any questions that pop up while they do the theory part of the learning and they watch the videos. And that's worked out really well. So that for me is a success story in itself. Because I think you have to have actionable outcomes after you've learned something, and that's something that you learn when you do your teacher training. You also have to structure your lessons in a certain way to make sure that optimal learning is taking place. And I think that really is a differentiator for me when you look at some of the other trainers out there who don't have the formal, education training. When I first started my business, I thought, I realized that South Africa in itself had an issue because everyone was looking in the same place. So I would go and meet with other companies, or I'd go to a recruiting conference here in South Africa, and people would tell me that, they're only looking on LinkedIn and job boards. So I thought, oh no, this is a problem. In the 10 years I'd been sitting internal, I taught myself how to source talent, and I thought there's a gap in the market in South Africa. Let me take it, let's run with it. Then when COVID hit, I realized it actually wasn't a South African problem or even an African problem. It was that every single recruiter out there was doing exactly the same thing. They were paying a fortune for LinkedIn Recruiter. They were paying a fortune for job boards. And they weren't thinking that they've got the whole internet at their fingertips. Like, why aren't they using it? There's 3 billion people on Facebook, for heaven's sake. Why don't we go and look for talent there? So that's when I realized, actually, I'm sitting on a bit of a gold mine here. That's where COVID actually helped to accelerate my business and, get me more exposure to do more training. And it was just amazing, to be honest, that something what I thought was a localized problem was actually a global issue, and I knew that I could address it. So I get excited every day when I see that light bulb moment come on and people contact me. I mean, I've got over, I think, 550 recommendations on my LinkedIn profile because of the positivity and the positive feedback that people have given me on my training. And that for me just means everything, because that's what I want them to do, to be better at their jobs, to be better at finding talent. So when I first started, I started in an agency, and we actually started with a week's training of this is how you recruit. And it was go to the job boards, go and find candidates. And back then, like, recruiting was easy. Like, you know, you got an email, spec came in from a client, you went to a job board, you found people, they were quite happy to travel to come and meet you at the office. You did an interview with them. You sent them off to the clients. He chose who he wanted to interview, did his interviews, then chose a successful candidate. And if you were really lucky, maybe chose two. So back then, I'm going back 15, 16 years, it was actually a lot easier. We all should have worked harder, and we all should have actually retired a lot sooner. So the challenges that I faced at the early part of my recruiting was the fact that when I started in the industry, it seemed too easy. Okay, and where I was severely lacking was having a network and having a reputation. Now, thankfully, back then, you know, LinkedIn was just a thing. I mean, that was launched in 2003. I started in about 2007, so it hadn't, you know, it wasn't really big in South Africa yet. But I started at that point to realize the importance of a network and a community and building your brand. So in the early stages, even though it wasn't that accessible to me, I realized that this is going to be a big differentiator for me in this industry. You know, you fast forward now to 2023, here you and I are having this discussion. You found me via LinkedIn because I've got a good brand, and, you know, the rest is history. So it's kind of like there wasn't enough emphasis in that first week of training about you, the individual, and attracting talent to you, because that's become crucial in this day and age. It's about, you know, do people know you? Do you have a good reputation? Do people recommend you? Word of mouth is very powerful. And that's what would be my advice for anyone starting out, was start consciously building your brand, thinking differently, and really creating that digital footprint across all platforms. Don't just focus on LinkedIn, so that people actually contact you and say, you know, I'm on the job market, I've heard great things about your services, would you represent me? And that for me just going to make your life so much easier, as opposed to you as the recruiter or the talent sourcer always having to go and chase people. I look at AI, and to be honest with you, I've run a lot of AI workshops this year. I didn't intend to at the beginning of the year, but I kind of stumbled across AI, and I thought, sure, I've got to strike while the iron's hot. While I was learning, I didn't see a lot of content for recruiters and talent sources, so I thought I'm going to build my own workshop, which I did. As I say, I've delivered it about 45 times now, and I always liken AI to, you know, giving a 10-year-old a loaded gun, because it can be a very dangerous tool, right? So what I think it's going to do is it's going to expose a lot of lazy recruiters who are just going to go to some generative AI like a ChatGPT, generate outreach messages, generate emails, do whatever they're going to do, and then not go and edit it, add in their personalization, make it sound like a human being, because no one speaks like ChatGPT, right? So it's going to really, if you take the top, let's say the top 25% of recruiters and talent sources in the world who really care about what they do, this is a career for them, it's going to help them to get better, because it's going to take away the admin, the heavy lifting, they're going to use it properly. But the people that are lazy and who don't maybe really care about people as much, not really that empathetic, are going to use it to take shortcuts. And they're going to use it badly, which is going to give them an even worse reputation in the industry, which I know is difficult for some people to believe, because recruiters are, you know, often lumped in with those estate agents and secondhand car salesmen. So yeah, it's all about, you know, using it correctly, you know, personalization, keep prompting. And if you can do that, then you're going to be very successful, because it can take away that admin, which no one likes to do. So basically, the Recruiting Gym is an organization out of the UK that's headed up by Angela Cripps. She's the MD. Very successful organization. I think there's about 10 coaches that are members of the Recruiting Gym. I'm the only one outside of the UK. And Angela's basically collected a whole lot of entrepreneurs, a whole lot of solopreneurs. We all work for ourselves, but she goes in with a, should I say, like a solution for a client, so a big client. So like last year we trained Amazon's talent acquisition teams in Europe. So I went and did the talent sourcing piece. There was another person who did the conflict management piece. One of the other trainers did training around the hiring managers, how to ask better interview questions. So it's basically a consortium of all of us that are considered to be, expert trainers in our field, and we combine our knowledge together. And by doing that, what we do is that we can come in as a very powerful resource to the client that's managed very well through the recruiting gym. So that was it was last week. I took over the daily workout. So every day 9 a.m. UK time, it actually goes out on Crowdcast, it goes out on LinkedIn Live. There's a new guest every day. It's a 15-minute session, and it's amazing what you can learn in 15 minutes. So I definitely look them up. Absolutely. So I'm actually doing a presentation next month in Amsterdam for Sourcing Summit. It's the 10-year anniversary, and I'm actually talking about something similar. The topic that I've chosen to go with is, how do you stand out in a world of AI as a recruiter and talent sourcer? So it's something I've been percolating with and thinking about. I haven't started putting anything, written down yet, but that's the easy part. I've got to get it right in my head first. And it's about it's about, how do you stand out? What do you do differently? There's a couple of topics that I have actually been looking at. So looking at different skills, and it's about your communication skills, and what do you have an opinion? Are you consistent where you are turning up and posting on which platforms? Do you have that trusted community and network already? Because people would rather deal with the human being than anyone else who's reaching out to them. So there's a lot of tips and tricks there. I'm focusing on 6 different areas of how you can really stand out from the rest of the pack, which is so important. I was actually in Sydney last year, and I did an opening keynote for Sourcing Summit 2. They're great conferences all around the talent sourcing space. So there's 2 big kind of parties that deal with the talent sourcing conferences. There's Sourcing Summit, which is run by Phil Tusing, who's actually based in Australia. And it's got much more of a global kind of flavor, more European. He does Sourcing Summit virtuals. He focuses, there's always one in October in Amsterdam. And he's done other cities. Tallinn is another popular one, Germany. So he does a lot in the sourcing summit space. And then out of the US, there's another organization that I've spoken for many times as well, many keynotes, an organization called SourceCon, which deals with talent sourcing. And they're also very popular. Great conferences if you're based out in the US. It's a good question, because I see it a lot in our industry, to be honest. So I'll be honest, and I did finish last year with a nice dose of burnout. It was a very difficult year personally. The business flew. The business was almost too busy. I was training all the time, hence the 5-month waiting list, hence the need to build an online academy. But you want to please everyone, so you just keep saying yes, and then you're just delivering training all the time. So to be honest with you, it is something that I'm very aware of. One of the big things that we're doing to mitigate burnout is we're actually making a move in 2 months' time. We're moving down to the coast of South Africa. It's about 15 hours away from Johannesburg. We're moving to a new region called the Western Cape. And what I'm hoping to achieve there is to have a better balance, because when you live in a big city, it's actually quite difficult to get away. You finish work at 4 or 5, you want to go for a walk, you want to get outdoors, you want to see nature. If I'm training late to North America, I want to start my day later, but there's not a lot to do when you live in a big city. So we're going to be by the beach, and we're actually going to mix up a lot of the long hours that we work with spending time at the beach, going for walks, lots of hiking in the area, beautiful nature, smaller place, less polluted. So yeah, that's what we're going to be doing to mitigate the burnout happening again. I do believe that the recruitment industry has evolved. some people more than others, but I think it's also got a lot to do with having just come out of a global pandemic where mental health was really under the magnifying glass and people were starting to recognize it and it became a thing. And I think that that's also driven a lot of industries, not just the recruitment industry, to be more cognizant of people and their feelings and how are they coping, and all of that. I still think that recruiters get a bit of a bad rap because we always get into trouble because we ghost candidates. However, ghosting is a two-way street. We get ghosted by our candidates all the time. A lot of people don't realize that. But I always think that there's room for improvement. And my best advice to new recruiters is be the over communicator. Don't bug the person, but rather give them feedback. Even if you haven't heard anything, it's always good on a Friday afternoon to send out that message of, I haven't heard anything. I'm meeting with a client on Tuesday. I promise to give you feedback. Don't spend the whole weekend stressing. There's nothing we can do. I'm just touching base. And I think that goes a long way instead of leaving a candidate worrying all weekend about, why didn't the recruiter phone me this week? Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's natural. It's human nature for it to be a negative thing. I mean, I remember when I was internal for 10 years and, if it was no for the company, something hadn't gone right in the interview, it was no. There was nothing else I could really do with the person. When an agency, you could send the person maybe to another company for an interview, or it's easier to network with your your fellow colleagues on the floor and say, I've got a great candidate. I don't know what happened with this interview, but he's great. Would you like to represent him? So I think that it's how you do it. I don't believe in obviously just sending someone an email about this. It's a conversation. It's looking at areas for improvement. The feedback was this, you need to improve on this next time. And then I always made sure, even though I was internal, that I had a network of recruiters that I could refer candidates to and say, this person was unsuccessful with us. However, I think they're brilliant. They just didn't have that one skill we were looking for, or they couldn't work in the area. And then I could say to the candidate, I'm going to send you to my friend at this company, or I'm going to send you to my friend at this agency, and just try and help them. I think is the best way. You've got to be memorable and you've got to stand out for the right reasons of being kind and assisting others. So for me, the most thrilling part of the roller coaster ride with the candidate experience is pretty much going to be the start, because you're sitting there, it's quiet, you don't know when they're going to drop the brakes and you're going to shoot out of there. And that for me is like the talent sourcing piece. It's finding the candidates first. Once you get someone into the process and they're interested and they going through loads of interviews and assessments, that's when for me personally it gets a little bit boring. But being able to find the right candidates sitting on the right roller coaster at the right time that match the skills that you're looking for, it's always been the thrill of the hunt for me when it comes to recruitment.